Uhuru, welcome to the Uhuru Solidarity Movement's Solidarity Spear Study, Burning Spear Study for Solidarity Movement. My name is Connor Voss, and we'll be beginning. I'm the National Secretary of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, local organizer here in Brooklyn, New York, and we'll be beginning the study in a couple minutes, just building an audience. And so invite your friends, share, get out your Burning Spear newspapers for the October edition of the Burning Spear, and we'll be beginning shortly. In the meantime, let me know how your week has been, what revolutionary things you're proud of that you've done this week. Welcome, Uhuru, Kristen. Did you watch the DSAPs that happened in Boston and in Brooklyn? I know I did. Did you watch the book fair, the chairman's dinner, evening with the chairman? And just in general, what's up with you? And we'll start soon. I'm gonna put on our music. I have another track that I have here. I'm gonna get out my newspaper as well. How are you, Kristen? And Tina, Stephanie? This one's kind of darker, I guess. Shared, great. Wonderful. We're trying it sideways. Does it look sideways? I hope not. Let's pick a happier one. This one will work. Hello, howdy. How you doing? How are you, Tina? Just reviewing all this. How's it going in Spokane, in Oakland? The Philly evening with the chairman, yes. Chairman's great. And the book, hearing the chairman speak at the book fair was really, really great for me too. I went down there, was helping out with that. I'm like assembling a bunch of videos right now because we're basically have a whole huge New York team now after DSAT. And we're trying to put together all the political education, all the other stuff that people are going to be wanting to take a look at and understand a little better. So that might be something too. Some of the speeches of the chairman are really, really powerful political education. Bum, ba-dum, bum, ba-dum, bum. This is a big serious PE, political education spear study today. Get ready. I got my carrots. I was talking with a comrade yesterday who was so excited that the chairman was vegan. Chairman and Penny are both vegan, have been for a long time. They really walk the walk. Talk the talk, walk the walk, but she's been a vegan for a while, and so it's exciting that the chairman's vegan to her. That's an angle that I haven't used before. Chairman's vegan. Join Uhuru Solidarity Movement. Okay, we're at 6:05, so keep sharing, liking. You know, you can thingamabob. You can, when there are any parts that really stick out to you and you want to share them on your Facebook page, I invite you to do that. That's great. So, let me close up my paper for a second. Theme music. Welcome now to the October 21st edition of the Burning Spear Study Solidarity edition. I'm your host, Connor Voss. I'm the National Secretary of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, which is the organization of white people created by and accountable to the African People's Socialist Party, a black working class political party that struggles and fights for the liberation and unification of all of Africa. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what that means in this very study. The Uhuru Solidarity Movement is part of the the mass movement of the African People's Solidarity Committee. Now, just a little bit of history. The African People's Socialist Party was founded in 1972 by three organizations. Shut that off. By three organizations in the southern United States area. The Junta of Militant Organizations, JOMO, the Gainesville Reading Group, and SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And so that was the year that was founded. 4 years later, they held a conference to found the African People's Solidarity Committee, APSC. A few of those people are still involved in APSC, including Penny Hess, who is the chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee. And the Uhuru Solidarity Movement is the mass movement, which means it's for a lot of variety of levels of commitment and involvement for white people with the work of the party under its strategy. So that's the Uhuru Solidarity Movement for you. What we're going to be studying today and every week, Saturday at 6 p.m., is the Burning Spear newspaper. The Burning Spear newspaper is the official newspaper of the African People's Socialist Party. It was founded by the Junta of Militant Organizations in 1968, and has been in continuous production for a very, very long time. I can't calculate exactly how many years that is, but is the video working well? Should I flip it back to vertical or not? Just let me know. So that's me, that's the organization, that's the spear. Yeah. So that's the intro. This spear study is about an hour long, so we'll go until 7. And for the first little bit, we'll read the article together. You guys can read along. If you have a copy, you can listen to me read it. You can read it yourself out loud. I don't know what you want to do. And then we'll have a bit of a question and answer. You can come on here. You can ask your questions at any moment, but we'll go through those. We'll do some analysis, summation of what this means for the North American white community, European white community, and then we'll talk a little bit about how you can be involved if you're interested in being involved with this work in this organization, and what that means, what that looks like, what taking responsibility for this kind of work means. I'm warm. It's hot here, even though it's October. It's quite warm here in New York. Okay, so the article that we're going to be reading is called The Point of the Spear. I know last week we read the cover story when I was in Philly with Comrade Paula Lipsy. But we're going to be reading The Point of the Spear, which is an excerpt from the chairman's work. There's always an excerpt of the chairman's work in this newspaper, and that's what this is. So that's on page 8. So if you'll open up to page 8. And there it is. The title of the article is "The Party is the Vehicle for Making the Revolution." And there you have the picture of the chairman, point of the spear, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. If you're interested in writing comments or questions or anything to the chairman about the work in the Burning Spear, you can write to Omali, O-M-A-L-I, at theburningspear.com. It's an email. The following is an excerpt from Chairman Omali's political report to the 2017 African People's Socialist Party plenary. The report provides a summation of our work for last year and guides the 2017 work of our party as we put revolution back on the agenda. This is the last part in the series of 9. Our pursuit of genuine freedom, which can only... Oh, sorry. Now we're in the article. Our pursuit of genuine freedom, which can only come about through the total liberation and unification of every square inch of Africa and African people worldwide, the African nation, can only come about through revolution. By this we mean that the colonialist, capitalist state must be overthrown and the blight of the capitalist system eradicated from the face of the earth. History has proven that it is totally impossible to cajole the Cajole means like coax or like convince the oppressor into turning power over to the dispossessed laboring masses upon which his system and future lies. Welcome, Keith. Uhuru. Bring your friends in here. There will be no exception for African people in the pursuit of power over our lives. We will have to fight for it. It is not simply a struggle with misguided people who are afflicted with an irrational hatred or fear of African people. This is really important. This comes up a lot. Uhuru, Keith, welcome. You know, the revolution is now, so I'm glad you're here. This question of rationality comes up a lot. A lot of people like to imagine that white people are irrational or there's something inherently, essentially wrong with white people. And that's a way of basically shifting the blame away from, and the responsibility away from white people to solve their own things. Solve the problem that we've created, that our ancestors created, and that our whole structure of our lives depends on. So it's important to place the blame where the blame is due, and that's what the chairman's sort of alluding to here when he says that this is not an irrational hatred of African people. It's a set of material conditions and historical realities. Okay, continuing on. Massive fortunes and a parasitic way of life purchased through bloody conquest depend on this current arrangement, this status quo, for their success and survival. It will, in the final analysis, take the force of arms to overcome the armed forces of the colonial capitalist state. It is the vicious armed forces of colonial white power that enables the ongoing domination of African people. All the petty bourgeois nonsense about a Willie Lynch syndrome is exposed in the face of the concrete reality of the armed to the teeth colonial state. Willie Lynch is a alleged slave owner speech that basically talks about how a slave owner has decided to pit African people against each other on the basis of age or skin tone or something. So I'm not exactly sure what the chairman means, but I think he means that the arming of the state is real and material. It's not some ideological... The state doesn't oppress people ideologically. It oppresses people with guns. It oppresses people with power over their lives and their bodies, not just with some ideological strategy. And that the petty bourgeois is involved in an ideological battle that doesn't actually get to the root of the material, concrete violence that the state and control that the state has over African people's lives. So, just want to make sure everyone's on the same page on this. Okay. Revolutionary armed struggle against colonialism and capitalism is the only thing that has ever brought any real semblance of liberation to oppressed peoples anywhere on earth, and there will be no exception for Africans. Yeah. There is no correct religion, culture, or secret documents hidden from our access that once discovered can free us. This is important. It's a material struggle. It's not an idealistic struggle. It's not... Anyway, okay. Africans will have to assume full responsibility for our liberation by recognizing that revolution is the only solution, and that we are going to have to pursue revolution through the purifying, cleansing, exuberant process of organized, politically informed, unrelenting revolutionary violence. And there's a video I did a couple days ago which kind of touches on this, about the question of revolutionary violence versus reactionary violence. State violence, white power state violence versus revolutionary violence, which is about freeing the oppressed, about the oppressed people liberating themselves from the grip of the oppressor. Next section. The electoral process is a tool in our liberation arsenal. Oh, just got a text. Uhuru, from Akile. Uhuru. Akile. The electoral process is a tool in our liberation arsenal. This is not to say that we will not use other forms of struggle. in the process of achieving liberation. Important. We will not desert the electoral path altogether. Whenever possible and necessary, we will take advantage of the democratic space available to our revolution. This is earned space everywhere it exists. Love that. It was not given to us. It was the result of bloody, life-threatening anti-colonial mass mobilizations from Kenya to Ghana, from Congo to South Africa, all the way to Mississippi, USA. The bourgeois electoral process was created as an institution for nonviolent struggle between contending sectors of the ruling class for control of the state to their profit-making advantage, nothing more. It is not designed to overthrow the system. It is one of the methods employed to protect the system by providing the means for competing capitalists to fight it out without threatening the stability or existence of the system itself. Because it was established to address the interests of the ruling class, organized, independent, revolutionary workers can access this electoral process and make use of this, quote, legitimate expression of political activity to take our program before the masses of our people, normally beyond our reach. It also denies the African neo-colonial petty bourgeois forces. So just some literacy. Neo-colonial is a term that was developed by Kwame Nkrumah, the leader of Ghana, revolutionary socialist leader of Ghana, and it refers to indirect rule through economic means rather than direct military, quote-unquote, colonial rule. It's still colonial rule. It's still a colonizer controlling a colonized population, but the means is not always direct. It's sometimes a little bit more insidious and perhaps harder to root out. And often it makes use of members of the African nation to be administrators for white power control over the African people. So that's what neo-colonial petty bourgeoisie means. Where are we? The bourgeois electoral process was created as an institution for nonviolent struggle between contending sectors of the ruling class for control of the state to their profit-making advantage. It also denies the African neo-colonial petty bourgeois forces a monopoly on this generally sanitized political arena. We should use this electoral institution when possible and tactically appropriate, not as a revolutionary solution, but as a platform to achieve a revolutionary solution. Our party has done this in the past, and we should prepare to do it again. This came up at Brooklyn DSAP as well, the question of the electoral electoral platform. An updated strategy. When we have utilized the electoral process in the past, it has been as an afterthought, something decided on at the moment because of special prevailing circumstances. Now, comrades, we must add the electoral process to our arsenal of weapons to forward the revolution. We must become experts at using the electoral process to advance our revolutionary objectives. Our revolution must concern itself with the capture of quantifiable ideological, political, and organizational territory. This is something that even the most politically unsophisticated street organization or gang understands better than most revolutionary pretenders. We must control turf, deciding who can penetrate our perimeter, what they can do, when and how they may do it. The electoral process can provide us with one of the assortments of methods we can use to claim turf. There's a picture of Akile Anai from her electoral bid. It can also allow us to capture the loyalty and political participation from a sector of the colonized African community for whom electoral politics has been the entry into political life, and who has been denied other forms of political struggle for more than 2 generations. The electoral process can also provide us the vehicle, continuing on page 13. Quick, turn to page 13. How y'all doing? Make sure y'all are liking, commenting, sharing, bringing your friends in, inviting. If you think that they might be interested in the question of electoral politics, get on there and invite them, because this is really, really valuable political education for people who have pursued electoral politics and understanding a revolutionary strategy to use the electoral arena, not as the end-all be-all, not as the to what end, but as a platform to put the to what end that the African working class has developed for 40 years, 45 years, 60 years, since the African working class began its journey towards liberation, which started with the colonization of African people. See the cover photo on your page. I'll check it out later. Okay. So continuing, for allowing those Africans for whom it is necessary the ability to learn from experience that the colonial capitalist ruling class is unwilling to peacefully relinquish power to the oppressed, it must begin the process of Okay, this is good. Gotta get a good seat for this. We must begin the process of grooming hardcore, highly committed, ideologically sound revolutionaries from within our ranks to participate in the elections, while also providing ideological and political influence over popular masses from within the colony who may involve themselves in elections. Understanding that the party's theory affects everything. It affects people who are running for office outside of the party as well. Black is Back Coalition contends with neo-colonial... Did I skip something? Oh, I did. You got to make sure to jump below the fold. Our party's mass work has already influenced the development of a revolutionary national democratic program that can inform most electoral work, whether by our party movement or the national democratic sector of the population at large. That's what I was saying. Strategic utilization of the electoral process can win support for our anti-colonial economic development. It can undermine the authority of the ruling class when their representatives are faced with the impossible task of publicly defending colonial authority from the ideological and political assaults delivered by our party, movement, and the anti-colonial representatives of the people at large. Our party must move to institutionalize a committee of cadres, that means full-time, devoted, highly developed revolutionary forces, dedicated to electoral work on an ongoing basis. This committee will keep the ruling class and state on the back foot, precisely, that means falling back, on the back foot precisely because the electoral system was created for servants of colonial capitalism and will not be prepared for non-opportunist, anti-colonial, revolutionary African working class competition in its own arena. Next section, Black is Back Coalition contends with neocolonialism. Our mass work with the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations will also facilitate our electoral work. The coalition has provided the only mass-based opposition to the two major ruling class parties in the U.S. Through the work in the coalition, our party has been able to contend with the corrosive impact of neocolonial, opportunist, political, and ideological surrender of our struggle by bourgeois-supported and created hustlers. We have been able to advance the general struggle for African self-determination, something that has been off the radar of our movement since the defeat of the Black Revolution of the 60s. The coalition has hosted a series of statewide and national conferences and events designed to win mass support for self-determination. Within days of this plenary, the coalition is sponsoring a national rally for Black self-determination in the imperialist capitalist capital of Washington, D.C. There are different approaches to the electoral system within the coalition. The important thing is that they are, most of them, anti-colonial approaches, and all are committed to promoting the national Black political agenda of self-determination that has been vetted by a popular process embracing thousands of African people. And before I forget, just in case it doesn't come up, and I'll remind people about this later, in Washington, D.C. on November 4th and 5th is the Black is Back Coalition rally in Washington, D.C., national rally. This was when I met Penny and Jesse and Johan and saw the chairman for the first time a year ago. So this is really important to me, and I'll be there in D.C. as well. Oh, they've got it here. Wait. Oh no, this is a different thing. There are different approaches to the oh wait, I already read that. We're here. The page here. Strategic participation within the electoral process also helps party members refine our message. Since convincing our community to vote their unity with our program is key to our success in this arena, it becomes incumbent on party members to speak concisely and fittingly toward that end. And we saw this in the St. Petersburg electoral process as well, that the party line was made more concise, more mass, and more readily available to the masses of people. And not just the masses of African working class people, but white people as well. That's what the work of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement is. And remind me to go through the principles of unity, because this article is written and aimed at an audience of mostly of black working class people. Obviously, we're reading it, we're white people in the Solidarity Movement, and we're expected to study this kind of thing. But I just want to get in specifically a little bit into some of our principles of unity that affect how we read and how this information filters out into our lives and our conversations. So I'll get to that. The next section is called Forward to African Independence in Our Lifetime. In 1989, I made a presentation at a mass meeting in Oakland, California, that was later included in a book published by our party titled Black Power Since the 60s. The book contained a number of polemics, that means like debates or struggles, concerning the ideological weakness of the overall African anti-colonial movement centered in the U.S. and questioned the fidelity of our movement to revolutionary principles and conclusions. 28 years later, the African People's Socialist Party reaffirms our commitment to revolution as the only way to attain our liberation and unification as a nation. The 1989 presentation was titled, "The Revolutionary Party is the Vehicle for Making the Revolution." Here is a relevant excerpt from that presentation. Quote, "We want to have a revolution. We can't get out of this without a revolution. If we're going to have a revolution, then we have to have a particular kind of organization. We can't have an organization like the Boy Scouts, for example, which is a white nationalist organization. Anyway, we can't have an organization like the Glee Club. We can't have organizations like the Democrats or Republicans. You have to have a special kind of revolution. It's got to be a revolutionary. You've got to have a special kind of organization. It's got to be a revolutionary organization to make revolution. Guess what else you need? You need revolutionaries. You need men and women who are organized around certain principles. Those principles, under the leadership of a revolutionary organization, subordinate every other question to the revolution. Every question is subordinate to the revolution. Every question, exclamation point. And that means that everything is consolidated. The goals of the revolution incorporate all these other questions. There's not separate, diverting political lines. They're consolidated into one so that the organization can move with the force of many, many people. Because when we're talking about the revolution of the workers, African working class, we're talking about a group of people with no control over their lives and the system, under the system, seizing control. So one person alone is not going to make that happen. That's why organization is required, and that's why the tightness and consolidation of the organization is essential to that. Okay. Quote, "What is the vehicle for making the revolution? The Revolutionary Party is the vehicle for making the revolution. Every effort, therefore, is to strengthen the Revolutionary Party." That's what this consolidation of the line is. "Every effort is for the Revolutionary Party to become the leadership of the masses around every question. Every question must be subordinate to the revolution. There must be an organization of men and women whose profession is revolution. They might be plumbers, they might be school teachers. They might have any other kind of occupation, but their profession is revolution. So when they plumb in a revolutionary fashion, in a way that promotes the revolution. When they teach in a way that promotes the revolution. They organize on the job wherever they are for the purpose of the revolution. Every question is subordinate. There is not a single question that can be free of the question of making the revolution. This full integration of the revolutionary model is important." Now, the Glee Club is not like that. Neither are the Boy Scouts, nor the Democratic Party. That's that section. And we should talk about, let's make sure that we talk about white revolutionaries. What that means for white people. Because I'm not going to speak beyond what the chairman says about African revolutionaries. But yeah, we got to make sure to talk about white revolutionaries. How y'all doing? Y'all holding in there? We're kind of slow today. We don't really got that many people. I don't know if it's my feed or whatnot, but we'll see. Okay. Imperialism is not a permanent feature of the world. This kind of takes a little bit of a different turn, but I think it's important because when you're making a revolution, you have to understand that you're trying to change something, and that means the thing itself can be changed. So it's important to understand that imperialism is not permanent feature of the world. Okay. Ideological weakness has allowed much of the world to succumb to the idea that imperialism is a permanent feature of the world that must somehow be worked around or maneuvered to accommodate the interests of the world's peoples. We know differently. There can be no, quote, peaceful coexistence between avaricious, predatory imperialism and African and other colonized people whose oppressed exploitation is the very lifeblood of imperialism. David rolled. Make sure y'all post in these comments. We don't just gotta sit back. We gotta participate. So get in here, make some comments, post Uhuru, like, thumbs up, emojis, and all that stuff. Uhuru! You can chant in your own bedroom like I am, because I don't got anyone else in this room, but I'm chanting here. So I hope y'all can still hear. I'm like, where's everyone? Where y'all at? Okay. Uhuru! So what do we say? There can be no, quote, peaceful coexistence between avaricious, predatory imperialism and African and other colonized peoples whose oppressive exploitation is the very lifeblood of imperialism. Imperialism must die, it must be destroyed, and revolution is the only means for bringing this reality into being. The existing imperialist popular expression of vampires and zombies is a reflection of nervousness of a superstructure of decadence resting on a tectonic change occurring within the economic base of capitalism, resting on a colonial resistance. Uhuru Kristen, welcome. Or I guess you've been here. I'm reading. We got one more column to go. Get back in here, y'all. Let's hang out. What this imperialist popular culture reflects is the reality of a dying but not dead dead imperialism. Our party, shovels and torches firmly in hand, are among the grave diggers that will torch and slay this monster and forever liberate ourselves in the world from this monstrosity. Comrades, our work is laid out for us, and this period of the crisis of imperialism provides us with the greatest opportunity ever for building and completing the African Revolution. Everything about Americanism is in disarray. Americanism, that's a term I ain't heard before. Okay. There is no longer an ideological anchor to imperialism. The African People's Socialist Party has a glorious history of 45 years of struggle. We are the only African revolutionary organization out there. We have never compromised. We have the political line of African internationalism, the strategy, and the organization to win. We have solved the question of the white people, and we have the unity of oppressed people around the world. It is up to every party member anywhere in the world to bolster our stance and increase our commitment to be leaders and cadres, to seize the time, to usher in the unification and liberation of Africa under the leadership of the African working class and the return of our stolen resources. We are winning! Uhuru. That's good. It's a good article. And then some of the pictures here. Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations marches on Washington. Can you all see that? APSP organizes African Liberation Day in Paris, France. You can see the European Comrades, Chairman, Deputy Chair. Uhuru Defense Force, organized to defend our community. Uhuru Defense Force. There you go. That's the reading for today. So what do we want to talk about? Okay, so what happens now is y'all put your comments and questions into the comments here. And we'll read them out. We can answer them. I'll give a little bit of discussion of what we just read, specifically for a North American audience, and then we'll get to the exciting part where we talk about how white people actually really participate and get in there and show up for this. Not show up for racial justice, but show up for African liberation in the way that the African liberation movement has put forward for us. So, what was the first chapter here we got here? Thanks y'all for tuning in. The party is the vehicle for making the revolution. So this is just basically about the role of organization. Organization is important because we understand that when a group of people has been oppressed and doesn't have power, that that group of people needs to be consolidated and move as one and be part of organization. And so the party is the emblem of that and representation of that understanding, that people who don't have power have to come together and that people have to be united And the theory of the party is an understanding that the people cannot just be united around anything. They're united around their own interests and a collective understanding of what is in their interests. That's why we say Africa is one people, one nation. One Africa, one nation. One nation, one Africa. Because the party understands and has taught us, especially in the Solidarity Movement, that white people share a common interest. They have something that groups them together. They've all been colonized. They've all been part of a colonial effort by Europe and by North America. And to destroy that colonialism, the African nation has to be united. The liberation of African people is the same as the unity of African people, because the liberation is against an enemy that tried to disperse, and one of its primary tactics was the dispersal of African people around the world. So that's what that is about. Okay. The electoral process is a tool in our liberation arsenal. So I went to St. Pete, so I participated. It doesn't make me special, but it just means that I participated in the electoral campaign of Akile Anai and Jesse Neville for District 6 City Councilwoman and Jesse Neville for mayor. I got to see on the ground how the electoral process was not the solution, as the chairman says. It's not the end goal. But we've been organizing. The party's been organizing for a long time. And this is... Oh my gosh, yeah, you're right. I shouldn't. I'll leave the carrots till after we're done. So the party, yeah, anyway. Okay, what's the last thing? Put your questions and comments in there. So the question of white people. What did I write down here? White revolutionaries. So the chairman's talking a lot about revolutionaries. And the importance of having dedicated people whose primary interest is in liberation of African people and this revolutionary model. That their attention is not diverted and split between being one thing and being another thing. They don't have their revolutionary stance and then their liberal stance, and they just choose which one they want. And when it comes to white people, this is the same. Now, our revolutionary organization, not our revolutionary organization, but the revolutionary capacity of white people is expressed through the African People's Solidarity Committee, which was created by the African People's Socialist Party and contains white revolutionaries who are working under the party's leadership in an incredibly different way than African revolutionaries work, but in an incredibly high level commitment. Take it very seriously. It's the priority in their life. So when it comes to white revolutionaries, it's not so much it's subordination of our upbringing, basically, upbringing in white society, and the subordination of that to a new model, which is the model set forward for white people by the party, which includes the 3 principles of unity, which I said I would go over. So let's go over those just briefly. The first principle of unity for USM and for the Solidarity Forces and for the Solidarity, this holds for the Solidarity Committee as well, even though I don't know where it fits into the Solidarity Committee's outline formally. But the first one is that we are created by and accountable to the African People's Socialist Party, which means we are not a sovereign organization. We're not a separate group of white people that decided to come together and do this work. We are an organization that was collected and gathered by the African working class political party, the African People's Socialist Party. We did not organize ourselves on our own. There was a conference held by the party. White people came together, and since that time, the party has been struggling to contain and gather and build the political line around how do white people organize as part of a strategy of African liberation. So that's the first thing. We're not parallel to, we're not organizing next to. We're not friends with the African People's Socialist Party. We're not in some liberal subjective relationship. We're in a principled relationship where we understand that colonialism is rampant, is violent, and it has to be overturned. So that's that first principle. The second principle, oh hey Rita, I know I went over with Rita these principles yesterday, but they bear repeating for anyone in USM, and especially given the thrust of this article, which is about African liberation from the perspective of the African working class. And so when it talks about revolutionaries, it's talking about African revolutionaries mostly. So for white people, white revolutionaries is a little bit different story. Second thing, African people have the right to lead their own struggle. So while African revolutionaries are leading the struggle, white revolutionaries are following the lead and the model set out by the African revolutionaries. Did I say that right? White people, North Americans, Europeans who decide to take on a full-time revolutionary stance, or even a part-time revolutionary stance, any level of revolutionary stance taken on by a white person in this organization, is under the leadership of the revolutionary force and theory of the African People's Socialist Party. So, and then the third thing is that we organize in white communities. We don't organize in colonized communities. We organize white people. We organize our people. We take responsibility for our people. We take responsibility for the oppression that our community sits on. We take responsibility for the stances of our neighbors, our white neighbors, our communities, our white families, our white friends, our white lovers, our white ex-lovers, our white enemies. Every white person, that's what we're taking responsibility for. Even white people that have done terrible things that I didn't personally hold a whip and whip an African person, but I take responsibility for that as part of this organization. Because I acknowledge that in a way, it's even more cowardly. I didn't even have to hold the whip. I got to reap the benefits of that whip, but I didn't have to hold the whip. So the wealth that's been accumulated in this country, I take responsibility for that process of accumulating that wealth. That's why we raise reparations from the white community. Because we don't want to be absolved. There's no being absolved from this. There's no way to make this not have happened. There's no way to, this happened. It's happening. We have to take responsibility for it. White people have not taken responsibility for this historically. We have not had, text. So I want to open it up now. What time are we at? I wanted to open it up. We're at 6:42. So we got 18 minutes. I want to open it up to comments, questions, concerns, requests, dedications, new members, people who want to join the Solidarity Movement. Post in here and let me know. Who we got watching? Kristen, maybe Rita's here. I don't know. Kristen, Tina, Keith, Katie, Sheen, Eldritch, KC popped in, Valerie Ross, Uhuru Valerie, Uhuru David, Uhuru Kristen, Rita's here. Great. So, what we're talking about is white people taking responsibility for the violence of colonialism. That we are not absolved. This work doesn't make us good white people. Our involvement with this organization doesn't protect us from white power imperialism. It doesn't protect us from the effects of this system. It's not an insulation. It's not a shield. It's not a... We don't hold up African people. We don't hold up our relationship to this organization and say, oh, you can't touch me because I'm in this organization and I have the backing of the African People's Socialist Party. We are not backed by the African People's Socialist Party. We are led by them. They lead us. They've given us an opportunity to participate, not a safe space. The African People's Socialist Party doesn't create a safe space for white people. We got safe spaces everywhere. African People's Socialist Party is creating a safe space for African people. Is creating an economy where African people can feed, clothe, and house themselves, provide themselves with the basic things that this system has never provided them, with the things that this country has never allotted for them, and has never and will never make allotments for. Because this country relies too much and has spent too much time on the bodies of African people, building its institutions at the expense of African people, killing African people in order to maintain its own sovereignty. And this country, frankly, is not even a nation. People talk about citizen, everyone's a citizen. This country does not have, it has oppressors and it has oppressed. It has, there are two Americas, as the party says. There are two Americas. There are the conditions that white people face in this country, which include prosperity, which include lots of wealth and resources, access, even white workers can rise up. The rags to riches story is a white worker story. White people have risen up. They've even revolted in Europe and in America on the backs of African people. So that's part of what we have to understand here. The Uhuru Solidarity Movement is not, in a way, it's not a white movement. It's a black movement, black-led movement. They've created an opportunity for us to participate under their demands. And these demands are not small demands. They're not easily met demands. The demand of the party overall is the complete liberation and unification of African people, with the understanding that the liberation of African people from colonialism will topple this system. There's no way for this system to continue. This system relies entirely on the oppression of African people. And for African people to be free, this system will not exist. It just can't. It cannot survive a struggle for liberation on the part of African people. Now, white people, including me, including all the people in the movement, we're starting to learn that I said this ship is sinking, but that just means the ship was badly built, and it was, but that's not the right metaphor. This pedestal, this colonial pedestal, here, I have a pedestal here. It has a plant in it, but I'll hold it up. Here's a pedestal. It has a plant on it. This is a pedestal. This plant would be the prosperity of the white community. I don't want to destroy my plant because it didn't do anything wrong, but when we say that white people exist and live on top of this colonial system, we're talking about a system that has always been uneasy, as the chairman says. It's always been shaky. It's never been stable. That's why we say America was never great. America's never been good. African people have never loved America. America has always been this bloody massacre that calls itself a nation. So white people are starting to see this. We haven't had to see it before because it hasn't hurt us. Now it's starting to hurt some of us. That's scary for some of us. For women, for gay men, white gays, white women, white disabled people, white trans people, white workers. We are starting to get freaked out because we're starting to get a glimpse of what the African working class has been enduring. And we have always thrown African working people under the bus in order to rise up to get that colonial pie that we were born with, some of us, white people. We have access to that wealth. We have access to those resources. Now we're getting a taste of what it means to maybe not have that in the future. It's crumbling. It's not always going to be there. Meanwhile, African people have never had access to that, and they are still here, they are still fighting back, and they are going to take back what is theirs, what has been stolen from them over the past 600 years, more than 600 years. I've been doing research. The Roman Empire colonized Romans, people from the Italy area, colonized Africa before 600 years ago, before the primary rape and assault of Africa and African people began 600 years ago. Romans were already laying the groundwork for that assault, for that pillaging. So, that's our responsibility as white people. And the demands of the African People Socialist Party are not to be taken lightly. They're serious. And they can't be argued with, really. We don't come into this movement to be like, well, the African People Socialist Party should do things a little differently. No, that's not. If you're here, you're past that point. If you're here, you're not saying white people are going to lead African people to liberation. That's not how liberation works. You can't empower somebody. They have to seize their own power. They have to live their own life. White people cannot lead this struggle for African people. That's our second principle. African people have the right to lead their own struggle. And their demand is their shit back. Their stuff. African resources. And when the chairman says every inch of African land, he means it. And if you've ever met him, you know he means it. I was with him in Philly, and I was talking to this woman, and she was like, you guys pay reparations? White people are paying reparations? Wow. And the chairman walks by, and he's like, we want it all back. Not just some of it. Not just 40 acres and a mule. We want the entire value of our labor back. Is that too much to ask? White people have always had that. Reparations. What is reparations? Reparations is a material acknowledgement. It's not just an ideological acknowledgement where I sit on my pile of wealth and say, I see I see you. I see you, oppressed African people. Reparations is saying, I know, and I'm going to stand with you. I'm going to be in solidarity. I'm going to be with you, and if you die, I'm going to die. Maybe that's a little dramatic, but that's what solidarity is. Same fate. Same fate. We're going to have the same fate. Either both of us are going to come out of here, or neither of us are going to come out of here. I'm not willing to live in a world where I'm the only one that's going to walk out of this situation. White people need to start standing up and saying, I'm not going to live in a world where my children survive and yours don't. But we're still equal. We're still on the same page. It's still all cool. We still need to keep the peace. Doesn't matter that your children are going to be dead. Your community is gone. You don't even know who your ancestors are. You got ancestors all over the world. You don't know where they live. You don't even know your name. You don't even know your people. I know everything about me. I got Ancestry.com and all these leaves popping up and all this hints and clues. I know all the 500 places where my relatives were. That's white people. We have that. We have that kind of full picture. African people don't. African people being free means that white people cannot control the world's resources. And I'm sorry, white people, we can't move forward that way. We can't be the babies. We can't be the babies of the world who like hoard everything to ourselves and be like, oh, this is all mine. No, you can't touch. Hands off. And we stick up a gun and shoot them. And then we get, I mean, we can try that. We can, if you want to keep doing that, if you want to keep hoarding the wealth, if you want to keep all the money that you got and all the opportunities you got, see how that turns out for you. See how that works. Right now, all the wealth of the world is frozen in the pockets of white people, Europeans and North Americans. Frozen wealth is going to cause and is causing this world economy to crumble. That's what we're seeing right now in the crisis of imperialism. And we're seeing white people, instead of seeing this happening and releasing the wealth back into circulation so that African people can be free and live their lives, instead of white people releasing the wealth, the hoarding of which is the source of everyone's issues. That's all our problems are. All our problems are the result of white people's hoarding of that wealth. Let go of it. Let it circulate. I know it's scary. African people are going to have resources and money and stuff and be able to trade. They're going to have control of their lives. I know that's frightening. I know that's scary. Probably it's partly scary because you know what you did. You know what you rely on for your wealth. Anyway, and by you, I mean me. I know what we rest on. I know. I've studied. I read Penny's book. Who wants to pay reparations today? Raise your hand. Who today has access to something? Even if it's $1, just $1. Who has access to a lot of something? White people have a lot of wealth. Who has access to $50? I'm going to call right now for people to make pledges. Reparations pledges. Today. Right now. Because it just gives me, it's a little chilly in here, but it gives me chills to think about living another day in this system and what that must mean for African people. Because yes, we can wait, but we have the ability to give today. So, if you're raising your hand and you're out there, I know we've got a little bit of a smaller audience today. I know people have been giving a lot this past month for the Days in Solidarity with African People, and this is not an obligation and it's not a burden. Reparations does not oppress us. African people do not oppress us. The demand that African people are making for reparations is not an oppressive demand. It's not oppressive language. African people do not control our lives. When white people go into African communities, that's oppressive. That is the reason why African people are being shot down by police in the streets, to protect the gentrifiers, to protect the white people coming in. When African people come and seize their stuff back, that's not oppressive. You can't oppress the oppressors. You can engage in revolution. So if you're raising your hand in the comments, just make your pledge for right now. I'm going to start with $5 here. So my pledge is going to be $5. If you're watching and you're new, your pledge can be your first membership payment if you want. The highest membership level is $100 a month. That's not very much in the scheme of things, but $100 a month is what's called the Ella Baker level. That's the highest level. So if you're watching for the first time, you want to be an Ella Baker sustainer, you can do that. The next level down is Marcus Garvey. That's $60 a month if you're interested in contributing at that level. You know, and I just want to say the amount that you contribute does not... Capitalism would have you believe that the amount you can pay is your value as a person. But that's not what Black Power is about. Black Power is not capitalism. And Black Power acknowledges that white people have a responsibility to return resources, but Black Power is not oppressive and is not about... It's about destroying our nation. It's not about destroying our bodies. So I want to make sure y'all can eat and have a home and have clothing and that y'all can be happy. And I found a lot of happiness and joy in this movement, and that's part of why I feel so comfortable giving this movement resources, is because this movement has taught me a lot and has educated me, and the African leaders of this work have earned my respect and trust. And their political theory is so clear to me. So that's where we're at. Just to check in, Kristen has repaired. We should use that verb. Kristen has repaired $20 worth of repairing. Keith has repaired $10 worth of reparations, and I have repaired 5, which puts us at 35. We have 3 minutes. If we get $5 each minute, let's see if we can repair $15. $15 of capitalism, worth of capitalism can be repaired. Is there anyone else on here? Does anyone have questions? We didn't get any questions this time, but if anybody wants to pop on here on the video, Keith or Kristen, it's up to you. And then we'll put on the closing music and we'll get out. Anybody? One thing I love that Jesse said during the appeal in Brooklyn was, he was like, is anyone going to contribute the full amount, $3,000? Silence. Crickets. And he said, we like that moment of silence because we like to acknowledge that there's a lot of wealth in the white community. And people have done it before, of contributing the whole amount. So our whole pledge goal for this study is $50. So we got 1 more minute, $15 from 1 more person. Who wants to jump down from the pedestal by $15? Another way you can do it is go buy a shirt on the Etsy page. Here, I'll put on my hat. Maybe that'll get $15. I got this color because this is the one that Thomas Sankara wears. He was the socialist revolutionary leader of Burkina Faso before he was assassinated. There we go. Kind of looks like a haircut. All right, we're at 7 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining us. For those of you who have, we'll try to build it a little bit more in the future. Some days we get a lot of people. Today we got between 5 and I think 5 and maybe at the most I saw 10 people on here. But yeah, if you could put it on your calendar, that would be really great. So next week, Saturday, 6 p.m. I'll see you right here. Uhuru, y'all. I hope that you guys are having a great time. I'm very tired from DSET, so I'm gonna go take a nap, a black power nap, and I'll see you all next week or sooner. Uhuru.